We should be live. Thank you all for joining us tonight on Wednesday. Sorry we were a little bit late. We had a few things going on. Um, this is for you, those that don't know. This is my lovely wife, Carrie.
Hi.
And we thought this would be kind of a cool thing to do, just to focus on, a little bit, tell them a little bit about our story, a little bit how we manage some finances, emergencies, and kind of set goals together, I guess you can say, and overcome, my money anxiety and anything that pops up when it comes to inflation and all that. Um, so I mean, we got some bullet points we want to cover. We don't want to keep people too long, obviously. I know people have other things to do, but basically just kind of an intro. We were married in 2013, coming up in 10 years. We're excited about that. We combined finances before then, right?
It was a staggered
Then
process. Yeah.
staggered process, yeah. But it was a pretty wild few years. I obviously had student loans that I had not paid off. Carrie did not have student loans, so that was pretty sweet. And we bought a house in 2014 as well, around that time frame, and got married. So I finished my master's in 2011, was it? Yeah, 2011. That sounds about right. And you know, I was paying a little bit of student loans, each month. But we had just met pretty much right around that time frame anyway. And then we didn't really take over major payments on the student loans until shortly after that. And then we kind of opened them up, I guess you could say, probably like, what was it, end of 2011. It would have been, probably, because it's about 6 months after I graduated, I think, if I remember.
2014.
No, for the loans.
Yeah, 2014 because it was at you after you graduated your master's.
Right, I graduated in 2011. Sweetie, you graduated in 2014.
No, your
Oh,
master's,
you're right.
your
I'm sorry,
master's,
I'm going backwards. I'm sorry.
your master's.
Holy moly. Okay. Yes. So 2014. I'm sorry. So I had loans carried over from my bachelor still at that point. Sorry, it's been a long day. Um, so I had some loans that I paid off, helped pay off, but we still had a lot. And then we got my master's and finished that, and that was a lot more loans. And that was right after we got married, essentially. I mean, and we had just bought a house, and so like we just kind of dove right into the student loans, and I remember we sat down and opened it, and because you wanted to know more about it, now that we were married and all that, and like how much do you owe, like how much we got to start making more of a plan, not just paying minimum this and that. So, my first question to you would be, what were your thoughts? Do you remember your thoughts when you first saw how much I initially owed? Just so everyone knows, it was like over 70 grand. So, what were your initial thoughts? Do you remember? I know it was like
Well,
9 years ago. So,
well, I don't remember having initial reaction on how much it was. I think I knew it was a lot, and to just put that number together was a lot. It's like a mortgage. It's,
it's
you
overwhelming.
keep paying off and little by little. I think what spurred us taking a seat and looking at it, because I always knew you had student loans, that wasn't a mystery. And that we together were going to work at it. It was in 2014, right before we moved in. Um, I was going to take a different direction with my work and my career, and that's what sparred because the financial we were going to be starting to pay back Brian's student loans in that August because it had been about 6 months from when he graduated. So I was switching gears. So we had to sit down and really talk about like um how do we make this work? Like, can I switch, you know, I can I switch gears and can we financially still pay back these student loans, which we haven't had to factor in? Um, and how do we do it all? And, shifting that Brian was going to be the main person making money until I finished my master's or got a job in my field. Um, and so we sat down and we kind of started a plan of how how we were going to balance our finances from when we started the month we started paying back student loans until I started working in my field. And luckily, it took until that January. Life surprised me, and I end up getting a great opportunity. And so, with that, it definitely humbles you and makes you very grateful for, um, what you have. I remember being, we didn't obviously we were working at a goal of paying off, making those payments, but it was, a nice peaceful time because we didn't have to worry about all this. We didn't have a lot to worry about with what else we were going to pay off. We kind of had a plan. And then as life happened, we, reallocated any income. We reallocated that. Our main goal was to pay the student loans off. And if and then I think 2 years later, we sat down and really took a hard look at, okay, this is how much we have left. This is our debts. And what is the big future goal that we can work at? And how can we essentially pay this off? Like, how can we take all our debts and slowly pay this off? And I guess pay one off and then reallocate that money, I guess, kind of like a snowball effect. So we had a whole plan. And as Brian has said, I think we achieved that plan. We worked really hard and life happened along the way. And, um, you know,
And
careers changed along
I
the way.
don't even think, cutting you off here a little bit, but like I don't think that, financially we weren't like heavy hitters. I'm going to be honest with you. That was 2014. We had just bought a house. You know, I think that at that point I was like at Depot, like a department manager, but I wasn't making a ton of money. And so like I think we had to build up as we got promotions. And so like you said, you got a job in your field that bumped our income up, and I got promoted shortly after 24 or end of 2014, I think it was, maybe early 2015, and so that was a little bit more money, and like we just kind of reallocated a lot of things. But at the time we also you know didn't have a ton of debt other than that. We had my car that we were still on, but we were pretty low on the payment after that. And
Yeah,
then our
it's nice.
house, that was it. We hadn't had the kids yet. And
Well,
so
and in 2016, we bought my car, and so we had a
right.
payment on that.
But we were already done with my payment at that point. And
Yeah.
so we kind of just traded it off at the time because we had other goals, obviously, of adopting two children, and we'll get into that more. But yeah, I think that our strategy was more so we just looked at our budget every month and said, okay, well, this just happened. We paid this off, or this loan off, student loan, and move on to the next one, because there's always like a group of 10 or however many there were. There was a lot, but let's start working on. I think our philosophy at the time was the snowball effect. But then as we got towards the end, like the last year and a half or 2 years, I was looking more at the interest, because this was before COVID. This was because the interest was still a factor. So the last like year or two before we paid it off, I was looking more at the interest because it was more interest. And, we were still looking at the lower balances. But like once we got down to like what, 4 or 5, I think we started looking and say, okay, well, that one's $4,000 and that one's $5,000, but that one's got a higher interest. So maybe we should, they're pretty much the same range. But yeah, we just kept increasing our payments to the point where, I mean, we started on I think we were always on the income driven plan. That's 25 years or whatever. I don't think I ever switched it from that, because that was the lowest monthly payment. And so let's just say I think it was 377 minimum, and then eventually went to 477, and then went way up after that as we started dwindling it down. But the benefit that we did was, like, let's just say it was 377 the minimum payment, we would put way more than that. Like we put like double that. So all that goes to the principal, you know? And so that's how we were able to pay it down and all that. And so that's something you got to think about when you're looking at student loans, I think. But it was good that it took us, several years. You got some of those stories where people are like, oh my God, I just paid off 40 grand in 19 months. It's like, okay, we had a lot more going on. We had just bought a house. We had to get a new car because your car just crashed completely. And, you know, we adopted kids was not cheap. Adoption is not cheap. We had the benefit of, some savings that you had and stuff throughout the years and stuff like that. That was blessed upon us. But that wasn't a majority of my student loans. I mean, we still had $70,000 to pay off in the long term. So, yeah, it was interesting. But in the long run, we were able to pay it off. Probably would have been awesome if we could have paid it off a year or two or even quicker, but we got the kids out of it too. So it all worked out. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about student loans for the people?
Um, I mean,
Confidence? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I would just say, be very diligent in what you're getting into with student loans, and try and, minimize, you know, try and get them paid off as soon as possible. But as you're paying stuff off, you just have to realize your goals, make sure you have fun along the way, or know your goals of, we're just going to have a couple hard years of knocking this out, and then we're going to
Yeah,
celebrate and, with find a way to celebrate once all this is paid off. We had the benefit of, we weren't in like a crunch or in a hurry that everything had to be paid off in X amount of years. We just wanted a plan of, we don't want this to take, until we're really a lot older, and we wanted to get it paid off within a reasonable time, while making sure we got to enjoy our lives too.
absolutely. I agree. So let's move into more. Um, the next set of questions I want to talk about is a lot of people are coming up on this right now. I mean, especially if you're a homeowner or really if you really any person in general is the importance of, I guess you could say, setting up a savings, some type of savings, like what our philosophy was over the years with the emergency funds, building up some type of an emergency fund. I will say, because I put some notes down, we can talk about this. Well, I mean, you actually, I got to give you props, give me the idea of the envelope system. So, Carrie, quick background I mean, a lot of people know this story, but I'm going to say it anyway because there's going to be a bunch of people probably watching this that don't know it. So, if you go on my website, you can hear more about this story. But basically, 2010 going into 11, when I met Carrie, like I had no credit. I had no idea about my finances. My dad helped me a lot with that stuff. And so basically I had my car joint with my dad, and that was it. Like I didn't have a starter Kohl's card. I didn't have anything. And Carrie kind of taught me. That was just like 12 years ago, basically 12 and a half, 13 years ago. Taught me a lot about the basics. Like, this is what we got to get you set up on. And like, I mean, I had a bank account. I knew how to use all that, but it was a huge like wake up for me to realize, wow, I need some more experience. And so she introduced me shortly after that, to Mr. Ramsey. I mean, we still follow Dave Ramsey, obviously. I'm a financial coach on my own as well, but we set up the envelope system. So basically, the envelope system, you were pretty obsessed with it for a while. I liked it. I thought it was good for like certain categories that were like, oh yeah, you definitely want to set up. But we could talk more about the emergency fund and what emergencies entail. But I mean, what were your initial thoughts about the envelope system? Why did you want to implement it for us? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I thought it was great in terms of, when the cash is out, the cash is out. I mean, you physically can see it. So you can see like if can help you set aside money for a specific thing.
Hmm.
We used it, I think, for something simple like, I don't know, the water bill each month, or,
Yep.
just so we know that that bill comes every 3 months. So we don't want in that 3 months all of a sudden to get this really big bill when we can plan, like, spread it out and say we're going to pull this amount this month, and kind of lessen the burden and put it in an
Hmm.
envelope so it's out of our account and we can't spend it. Like, it's for that specific purpose. Same with, I think we've done different random categories. We found it doesn't work for everything, like grocery shopping. For us, it didn't seem to work because for gas. I'd love to say we use cash for gas, but it just doesn't always work like that. It,
But we don't, just so people know, we don't, there's some people that use credit cards for points because they get it on gas. I
yeah,
do
we
have one.
don't.
I have one credit card where you get 3% back as long as you pay it back. But if that's all you're using it for, but we always have used debit card or just off our account. But like, yeah, the cash thing, like to this day, we still have the water one, right? So we have our water comes out quarterly. Most people's come out quarterly, but we put a certain amount each month in there for the quarterly. What we estimate, and then usually the last month when it's actually due, usually we're in the ballpark range of whatever we owe that month. We'll pay off the rest of it. We also have like a Christmas one, which we'll talk about real quick in a minute. Slash North Carolina because that's where we're going. So we did put a bunch aside, a little bit of money each month the last however many months it's been. And then we don't use it as much anymore. That's kind of what we do because we figured out, like you said, it's too much back and forth for certain categories like gas and groceries. It was too much like, oh, I'll go deposit this and then bring it back. And then we just ended up budgeting it into our checking account essentially. Um, but like in terms of the emergency, so going into emergencies, I guess you could say, because it's important because we wanted to set up an emergency fund. It's been a few years ago, at least a few years now. So when we went to do it, we read a lot of like books and like how do you do an emergency fund? Like, do you just open a savings account? No, 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 no. That's what like it's an emergency fund that's less access to the money. And so we found this cool. I don't know if you remember this, but we found this cool. I don't remember if it was a guy or a woman that was like, get a picture frame. Do you remember this? Get a picture frame and like whatever the pictures out front and hide the money behind the picture frame, and it said something like "Do not break unless emergency" on the front of it, and you would break the. I think you found that. I don't know. That was years ago, but I just remember that today, and I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So like you can't break the or you can't break the frame unless it's an emergency, basically, and kind of open it. But we did that, and then we ended up just using an envelope, and we agreed several years ago, to hide it in our house, basically. Only me and Carrie know where it's at, and it's not easy access. And people say, well, you could easily go downstairs and look for it or go there and say, oh, we need this money and all that. But it's just all about mindset. It really was. It was just me and Carrie said, listen, this is what's an emergency. This is what's an emergency. This is what's an emergency. Everything else is not an emergency. And that's where you got to kind of decide what emergencies really are. Emergencies for us, we live in a house, is, all of a sudden Carrie's car last month, right? That's an emergency. We thought we were going to take it in for 150 bucks of repairs. It ended up being like 1,200. That was an emergency. We did not expect that. It's all cleaned up now and all that, but a house, right? Maybe get a leak. You got to call a plumber. That's an emergency out of nowhere. You didn't expect it. But like just coming short in your checking account and saying, oh, I need this to go buy groceries or go do this or pay off my credit card, that is not an emergency. And I think we just kind of got on the same page really quickly. Like, we're not coming down to this envelope unless it's one of these few things, you know? So,
Yeah,
anything else? Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say it's really like you have to really build that trust with your partner about um, communicating about money, and learning to trust. that they have your best interest at heart, and they, communicate, like, whether you talk each month about what you're spending money on, who's in charge of paying the bills. Um, we slowly built our trust over when we, moved in together, and then when we got married, bought our house, and then when we had kids. It was a gradual building and communicating about finances. It
Yep.
didn't all happen at once. It wasn't meant to. It it was, we combined and talked about as much as we needed to at that point in time that worked for us.
Mhm.
I think it went from talking about anything we need to pay off together was we'd use money for. And then when we bought a house, it was, we added a little more because we had other bills, and we had the kids, and it was, we reallocated it again because you know, they are a portion of our finances, and,
Yeah.
we have to allocate money for them because kids have expenses too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think the key I want to stop in there, I was going to add this more towards the end, but like the key that Carrie keeps saying is, and I've seen it so much over the years, not just in my own business. I did taxes this year, and I heard it a couple times. I heard it a lot when I was at my credit union, is making sure that you and your partner are on the same page every day with money, and like you're both involved. And that's actually, I'm finding out that's less common right now. There's usually one person. Carrie and I were talking about this last night. There's a lot of times one person has been running the money for 8 years or 10 years and all that. I heard a story this past winter, a few months ago, beginning of the year, and this lady said basically her husband had just died. This is a true story. I mean, I was doing her taxes. Her husband died, and basically, she's sitting there with me. She's like, Brian, I don't even. He did all the finances. He did all the money. He did all this tax stuff. I don't even know how to do this for the last 8 years. And that's like a common thing I've heard over the years. And it's just so important to make sure that both of the partners are involved somehow. You know, you shouldn't have to be. I mean, heaven forbid, knock on wood, something happens tomorrow. Something happens tomorrow. We don't know. Life is short, right? Are you going to be is that person are you going to be comfortable if your partner leaves you or whatever happens? Like, what are you going to do basically? And I just think it's just something that we really got to think of. And if you're not on the same page, it's time to get on the same page. I think, sit down, have that chat about your money. It's not going to be comfortable for most people. It's going to be an uncomfortable conversation because you probably have never done it, or you've done it very minimal over the years. And so it's not going to be comfortable, but you got to make sure you're on the same page. I mean, you really do, because we never know what's
Especially when you go to marry them and you marry the person
married
you're
or
married.
not. I mean, married or
Yeah.
not.
Well, I
There's
mean, even when you get married and there's stats, I mean, you're marrying that person and what they're
Yep,
bringing to the table, and it
exactly.
becomes,
Their
you know,
problem, their problems are your problems as
you
well,
work
right?
together on how are we going to, you know, how are we going to take care of this together? What makes sense for our family?
Mhm.
And have that conversation because their debts affect you.
Absolutely. Yep, it's so important. So financial goals, we wanted to talk a little bit about our financial goals. We obviously set financial goals every year, every couple months, every month. Um, we both have always had similar financial goals in my mind, of what we wanted to accomplish, where we wanted to go on vacation, what we wanted to save for down the road, um, what we want to do for our kids, everything like that. But I wanted you to, well, I mean, I guess I could talk about it too. We look at Christmas. So a lot of credit unions, I'll dive into this since I was in the credit union field, and some of the banks are starting to do like what's called a Christmas savings account or a Christmas fund. Um, it's pretty cool. And so we kind of started it as an envelope system. That's one of our other envelopes. And we probably didn't do that great a job the last few years. This year, I think we're going to do a lot better. But usually July or August, we aim for starting a small each month up to December. saving something for 5 months or whatever, 6 months, because when it comes Christmas time and you're like, oh well, oh shoot, we didn't save any money, and now we got this for the kids and this for the parents and da 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 da. But if you start saving like 5 or 6 months in advance, it makes a huge difference, because then you can get to November and come up on December and be like, all right, well, we probably got to save a little bit more, but at least we have all this money um, that came up before. So we always have. I mean, I don't know about you, Carrie, but I mean, I think that it's important to start saving for big events. I know you have we call it your big months, right? So our big months in our family are March and October. And we just got, we got March is just like a gotcha day for our child, and Carrie's birthday and mom's birthday. And it's just an expensive month. In October, it's me and my son's birthday, and it's Halloween for the kids. It's a little bit of everything. And it's usually cider mill, even though cider mill is not super expensive. We usually go to the cider mill in October. I mean, there's so many things in those 2 months. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit, Carrie, but like what would you say is your thought process on like recommending, if people could sit down and think about, well, I mean, I think my thought process is you always should be looking to the month in front of you. So we're in May now. We're already talking about June. We're not doing our budget till the end of May, but we know our vacation's coming up in June, one of ours, and we know end of school's coming up, and we're already talking about it, and it's only May 10th. But do you have any other tips, would you say, for like saving or setting financial goals for like bigger months, or what do you think on that?
Yeah. So, something
Right.
I do at the beginning of the year, and I've done it the past couple years, is usually during, I get about a week off for work. So I take a couple hours during that week and I go to a coffee shop and I plan out my entire next year. And what I mean by that is I take my Google Calendar, I try and incorporate as much as I can think of within reason, all the birthdays, all the last day of schools, the appointments, 4th of July and haunted houses, So I try to plot all that and in fact and start thinking, and any vacation. So I start thinking like, okay, this month we're going to be paying for this. Want to go on this vacation and we're going to get tax money back. What do we do with it? And we sit down and talk about it. And part of our tax money usually goes towards our emergency fund. Um, and those bigger months, if we know there's something we want to do with the kids that year, we might use tax money, or there might be slower months. So a month we know there's not as many expenses. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if we can kind of, save some of that money and move it to the next month, not have to itemize everything uh, and use all the money in the slower months.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm pulling up a link here while we're talking here. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think the one of the last couple points I want to end on here is, it's kind of, times are changing, and you kind of have to. It's one of the most difficult things is to change with the times for anybody. Change is not something people like. And what I mean by that is, so our original goal, and if it's all over my website, it's all over. Me and Carrie have talked about it for years. Our original goal was for the 10-year anniversary to go to Hawaii. Well, a couple things came up. We probably didn't expect a year and a half ago or a year ago when we started thinking about, booking this, that inflation was going to go insane and prices for flights were going to go insane, and hotels and everything would have went up like a ridiculous amount. Um, but we had to kind of just go with the flow, and we kind of put our pride aside. We sat down and said, listen, realistically, we weren't ready for how much I think it was going to be with all the inflation. And we said, realistically, that's a great trip and we will go to Hawaii. We still are going to go to Hawaii, but we decided to, one of the states that we both love and is North Carolina, and it's beautiful. So we're going down there for like 4.5 days and going to Raleigh. And then we're going to go to over by the Outer Banks. Carrie's never been to the Outer Banks. So I'm super excited. I've been there, I think, twice.
Be fun.
And so it's going to be great. And we're going to have renew our vows on the beach somewhere. We'll find somewhere, but we're still going to have a baller trip. But it was a lot less money, right? So it's like, it's kind of just putting your pride aside a little bit and saying, you know what, inflation happened. A lot of other things happened in our life in the last year that we were not expecting. That's how life works. And, you know, we'll get there eventually. I think it's okay to just admit that, like, you know what, I got to make the change because, a lot of factors that I wasn't ready for and maybe didn't see coming came into play. So unfortunately, I got to push some things back, and that's not such a bad thing as just admitting, you know what, I can't afford that right now, or this came up and I can't do that right now. When you say that's, would you agree with that, or anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it also, Hawaii is great, but when all is said and done, it is more important just to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and we will get to Hawaii. But you know, along the way, life happens and our goals shift, which, because of our goal shifting, that fun goal might have to be a little bit further down the road, and that's okay. We could have easily made the decision, we don't have the finances for that big of a trip, but we're throwing on a credit card, which that's, you know, for us that would stress us out personally, just us. I
Yeah,
don't know if everyone else's, but that would just stress us out to have to pay that money back, and not have have it saved. It's almost like a reward. It all stems back to how we paid off the student loan. That was back
yep,
in 2016. I came home with this whole plan, and the end goal was our 10-year anniversary. We were going to give ourselves X amount of time to save money for a trip for our 10-year anniversary, um, which we made that goal. Um, my place was, I mentioned was Hawaii, but the goal was to have a trip to celebrate,
yeah,
and we
that was the
decided.
goal. We accomplished that. We accomplished that goal.
But we will accomplish it. It hasn't happened. We're
No,
not
we
there.
did accomplish it. You just said we're going on a trip. It's a
No, I
beautiful.
mean, we haven't gone. We're not on the beach in North Carolina yet until next month.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand what you were talking about there.
No, we accomplished the goal of getting it all set up.
I got you. I got you.
We just don't. We have a month left until we experience that trip.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's summarize because this was great. I had a lot of fun with this. Hopefully, a lot of people will see this in the replay and everything, and hopefully, this is helpful. So yeah, we just talked about a little bit about, obviously, I think we hit on a lot of spots that we wanted to. A little bit about our story. Student loans, which is something that we both accomplished. That's a huge accomplishment for me and my wife and Carrie. Emergencies, financial goals. We all work to. I mean, we work together, both of us, and so it's one of those things that, um, it's important to work together. And I just kind of wanted to reiterate kind of our story so everyone could see, because you don't get to hear everyone's story all the time. Sometimes it's, you know, you just kind of keep it to yourself and all that. But it's good to see like different people's perspective, I think, and all that stuff. And then Jason just commented, North Carolina will be awesome, and you'll get to Hawaii soon. Thanks, Jay. Jay's the traveling man. He does some crazy marathons and stuff like that. But absolutely, I agree. Um, yeah, to summarize, that was kind of what we wanted to cover. Anything else you want to say as your parting ways? Thank you for being my lovely guest.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun. Um, I mean, I know a lot of couples, one of the top things couples argue about is finances, money.
Yep.
And I think it's one thing we always try to make sure it was not a hard conversation, or not a conversation that was going to end in an argument. That we were going to find a solution to, if we were, whatever we were spending our money on was together, because that's
Yeah.
what families do. And
You're in
um,
it together.
yeah, and you said to be flexible when life changes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's definitely one of the more, if you read all the articles summarizing, because I'm going to kind of pitch myself here, but summarizing, I read a lot of articles about how, money is one of the main reasons, if not the top reasons, for couple issues, for marriage issues, for possible divorces. Like, it's got to be to the point where you got to humble yourself, one or the other, or it could be both of you. You got to just sit down and just hash it out and be like, listen, we got to get on the same page. We just have to. We don't have a choice. We're in this together. So yeah, in saying that, it's just, I'm seeing that more and more in my coaching, and everyday conversations with people, is especially since inflation really kicked in last year. um, it's just something that I've heard from my clients consistently, regularly, especially like I budgeting strategies. Like, I have no control. I get nervous the last 10 days of the month. I get, it's just like, it's constantly like, I don't know where the rest of my money's going. I've had that multiple times this past month. People have said that to me. Um, and really, it's just the debt is racking up. I mean, you can look at the United States, you can look at all the scary stuff going on with the debt ceiling right now and all that, but it's with consumers. I mean, credit card debt is way up in the last year and a half. Everything is up. And so that's just, a couple of the things that I always hit on in my coaching is like non-judgmental, individualistic, one-on-one coaching. We just sit there and we can chat and get you all on the same page, and make sure that, your stress that you're feeling, which is a lot of people right now, a majority of people are feeling some kind of stress when it comes to money right now. We just have to admit it. Um, get you less stressed out about that. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some work, but you should be excited about your money in the future. Look forward to the financial goals. Like me and Carrie said, we set our financial goals. What are you looking forward to in 6 to 12 months? How are you going to get there?
make an
So yeah,
adventure.
what was that?
To making an adventure and
Make an
celebrate your
adventure. I
wins. I
mean,
mean,
it's not fun what we're all going through right now anyway, right? I mean, gas is down a little bit around this area. I was proud to pay $3.19 with my Kroger points today or whatever, but their groceries are way up. The restaurant we went to was way up. I mean, you got to live with the times, unfortunately. So yeah, and saying that, I'm going to drop in the chats here. If I do offer a free chat. Hold on one sec. I got a couple platforms I got to post on here. So on Facebook and on YouTube. I got people lighting me up on Facebook right now. So there's a free chat. I do offer 30 minutes to kind of get to know your situation, you and your couple, or whoever it is. And hopefully it's something. Oh, it's popping in this stream app too. Good. Hopefully it's something that it's okay to put your pride aside. It's no commitment. You chat to me for 30 minutes. You tell me everything going on in your life. If it's something I can help you with, I'm going to help you. Honest opinion. Non-judgmental, individualistic. I don't believe there's one set rule for every single couple out there and how to pay off debt and how to do that. It's all about what's going on in your life. I mean, I think me and Carrie talked about that extremely at the beginning of this. Is we could have paid that student loan debt off probably in a few years if we wanted to, but things came up. We wanted kids. We wanted to adopt, which is not cheap. We wanted the house. We wanted to make sure our car was functioning. We had other goals. We still wanted to travel, throughout Michigan and Chicago and wherever we wanted to go. So it's just all about kind of what your approach is. I mean, you could be completely different than somebody else. So, yeah. So I dropped those in the chat if anyone needs them. I'm around. Thank you for joining us, Carrie. I love you. I will see you in about 30 seconds here because we're in the same house. But appreciate you joining this, and hopefully we can do this more often. Maybe in a couple months we'll think of a few other topics we want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to come on back, and if I have any insight, I'm happy to share.
All right. I appreciate it. Everyone have a good night.